down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and I am your host, Rick. Well, so here's the thing. I have made a couple of changes, not only internally with doing some of my stuff, but I've also made a change on the streaming connection. So I'm hoping that things are going to look better and be better experience for you. And I'm actually, part of that is I'm actually watching the streams a couple other places just to make sure that the quality doesn't change. And so hopefully there won't be as much buffering and issues, and you know, you'll get to see my wonderful face for radio, you know, it's cute face for radio. You don't care about the face for radio. What you do care about, though, is the background. So let me go ahead and step out of the way so you guys can see it. I can't bend over backwards like that here. Let me scoot over to the side a little bit over here. Yep, there we go. Yeah, I'm using filters. Yes, I am. But anyway, so look, I cannot take credit for any of these Halloween backgrounds. And actually many of my backgrounds have been submitted by, of course, the wonderful, the magnanimous, and the longtime Whiskey Warrior P1, Buddy Weiser. So a lot of my backgrounds come from him. So anyway, so let's see if this lasts a lot better, and takes care of a few things that way. Sorry, the dog's going nuts. Mrs. Whiskey came back. Speaking of Mrs. Whiskey, she's got, Halloween decorations up because, of course, you know, you have to have Halloween decorations coming up for the end of the month here in just a few days. And we have pumpkins sitting all over the counter too. But the Halloween decorations, they hang. Now, I'm not the tallest guy in the world. Okay. In fact, my son is 6 foot and I am like a few smidges below that. And I do mean a few smidges. Yeah. Mrs. Whiskey just laughed. But the thing about it is that the decorations are hanging, and this happens every single year. We go from, you know, these kinds of decorations, we switch over to Christmas decorations, and of course they're always hanging. So I have to start my year worth, or my time of year where I duck as I walk through places, because, you know, Mrs. Whiskey's a little bit shorter than me. But anyway, not a big deal. But just so you know, I mean, it is Halloween coming up. Halloween lands on a Tuesday, so there won't be any kind of Halloween special like I've done in the past. Not this year. So we will be on the 1st, November 1st. And hey, I also noticed and counted it out. By the way, she's saying hi, everybody. She's looking at the chat on the window here, or on the screen, and says hi. But anyway, oh, she might step in. Nope, she's not going to step in. She says, no, I'm not going to do that. All right. So anyway, because we're not falling on Halloween, I am not going to do a Halloween special episode. And 250, folks, 250 episodes is coming up right quick. I can't imagine. I mean, I couldn't have imagined when I started this thing as far back in the day that I would be at 250 episodes. You know, when I first started it, and it's all due to you folks. It's all due to you guys coming back, all of my Whiskey Warrior P1s and guests who come and listen to what's going on. I mean, what I do, the product that I provide, because without you, there wouldn't be any show. And so I really, you guys, you can't even know. I mean, you can't even know what pleasure and everything. I look forward to Wednesdays and Saturdays, not just because of the work, but because of the fact that I get to put out a program, and I keep trying to make it as good of quality as I can for all of you. And so this is because of you guys, because of all of you. And so, so yeah, it's just incredible. But hey, there's another set of folks. Well, first of all, before I get into that, let me go ahead and tell you, tonight I'm drinking from Buffalo Trace. I'm almost at the bottom of the bottle. It's almost time to buy a new one. And so there you go. That's what's in the glass. And of course, because it is Wednesday, we are going to be talking about True Grit Roots Network. This is in the True Grit Roots Network tumbler glass with my whiskey stones in the bottom. That is some good whiskey, good bourbon, actually, Kentucky bourbon. Yeah, straight bourbon, Kentucky straight bourbon. So I'm sure that gives me at least a half thumbs up with Bonnie over on Rumble. But anyway, yes, I have almost empty bottles, and that's the reason for that, Outlaw Dogs, is because I keep drinking it. So anyway, and buddy, what's the problem? You keep saying hello. I said hello to you. Is anybody else not seeing him? But anyway, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Hey, buddy. All right. So let me tell you, because it is, of course, it is Whiskey Wednesday, and Whiskey Wednesday is like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. And, of course, that's tonight. Tonight is Whiskey Wednesday. So let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about the True Grit Roots Network. Now, I've been telling you about TGRN and our launch of our blues channel, TGRN Blues. And I've just started telling you about some great programming, some of the programs that we have. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about a great program. It comes on Sundays. You know, these are Central Time, 2 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Central time on Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. Central is Roots and Fruits, put on by the fabulous Vinnie Marini. And Vinnie says that his inspiration for this show was after having worshiped at the altar of Willie Dixon, who stated, quote, "The blues are the roots and everything else is the fruits." Since he was 16, this show will explore the blues and every other genre of music. If it fits the theme and works into the mix, nothing is going to be excluded. It's 2 hours of music that tells a story, themed sets, and the same songs sometimes from 2, 3, or 4 different genres. You just never know. It airs again Sunday, 2 p.m. Central Time. 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Central Time is the only time that Roots and Fruits is on. You need to get it there. Unlike Music on the Couch, he doesn't carry it over to others. But it's a fabulous program, folks. You really got to go check it out. Check it out on tgrn.net. And of course, I appreciate them. And as always, I need to tell you that I am a part owner in the TGRN station, but go and check it out. Check out all of our wonderful programming over there. That would be fantastic. All right. So let me get on to today's theme. Well, first of all, it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. But we now have a Speaker of the House. Yes, folks, I know it was a horrible 3 weeks for us to go through, and it all started with Matt Gaetz going and not really having a plan necessarily as to what came next when he stood up and voted for no confidence. But he apparently we have finally got a speaker with a 220 vote majority in the House, and it comes down to Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson, who is a Republican from Louisiana, who has essentially taken up the position. Now, let me just bring this up here for you. So here's of course the report from the Daily Wire. In terms of the House elects Mike Johnson as Speaker. Well, you know, I wasn't even aware that they were going to have a freaking vote. I saw on Twitter, or well, formerly known as Twitter, on X, that there was a nomination of Mike Johnson, and I have never really heard of Mike Johnson, to be honest with you. I never really heard of Mike Johnson, and it turns out that he's actually not that, he hasn't been in the House that long, so he's not a long-term necessarily Republican representative, but he's been there for a little while, just not as long as somebody, say, the likes of McCarthy or Jim Jordan or some of these other folks, Steve Scalise. And apparently, because I haven't heard of him, which is not all that surprising because he's a representative out of Louisiana, but he is a fairly young individual. He's in his 50s, early 50s, is what I'm being told. And he actually hasn't really done too much in terms of pissing people off, which I think seems to be a requirement for, you know, what is going on here. I mean, he's done a couple of things. Trust me. As soon as that vote came down, you should have seen X. X was just every freaking Democrat on X was just livid. They were going off on him and everything else with regards to the entire thing. It was interesting to see all of the Democrats just losing their mind. I haven't seen them lose their mind in like a while. So it was pretty glorious. Every single Democrat pundit and jerkwad on X came out and was talking about it. Even Rob Reiner was kind of going off on it. But anyway, the point being is that apparently this guy comes from a constitutional lawyer background. He also at one time was a conservative radio host. And I found that kind of interesting. Taking a look at a couple of sites that score or that rank Republicans, he gets a C rating for being a 74% conservative based off of the Liberty Score on Conservative Review. If you want to check that out, libertyscore.conservativereview.com. You can check out all of the, you know, any of the nation's representatives and take a look at that. But apparently, according to his record, he only has a 74 there. Now, you know, I don't know, 74 voting 3/4 of the time is actually probably not that bad. I mean, it's a lot better than somebody who's a rhino like McCarthy and Mitt Romney, which, by the way, Mitt Romney was definitely unhappy about what was happening with it. And so, yeah, it was, believe me, all the rhinos in the Republic, or all the rhinos in the liberal Democrats, and well, I mean, liberal Democrats is kind of a double mention there, but all of the Democrats and all of the rhinos have been just livid over this. So that gives me a indication that maybe he's the right kind of guy for the job. Now, I also have another one. So Liberty Score seems to be pretty popular with people, but here's another one that I found. This is from Heritage Action. So Heritage Action is, and they're using the logo for the Heritage Foundation. I actually enjoy the Heritage Foundation, so the Heritage Foundation is really good. And he's actually got a little bit better score over on the Heritage Action for America page, which is heritageaction.com. But Heritage Action ranks him at a 84% for this session and then gives him a lifetime score of 90% for his voting. And he looks a little bit younger in his photo here, but apparently he's at least more conservative than what we had with, McCarthy as an example, or even the guy that was ahead of him. I think it's Emmons or something like that. That was really kind of scary. Or God forbid if Hakeem Jeffries would have gotten in. So the reality of the situation here is, and this is part of the reason why, everybody's pissed, is because he actually filed a law, or I don't know what they're called. It slips my mind. But anyway, he filed some paperwork to get a bill passed to at least look into the 2020 election. So he is on the side of what a lot of people are considering the MAGA movement. But just again, in my mind, just because of the fact that all of the liberals are freaking hating him right now, that's kind of a win in my book. So some of these things that he may have done in the past or may not, he's at least looking toward, America first kind of values and those kinds of things. So I'm going to hold off for complete judgment here, but it's definitely looking positive, and that maybe what could have potentially been a complete disaster has actually been avoided for the moment, at least. So he's also being told he's 100% Trump. I know he's behind Trump and everything else. And so, yeah, he's working on it. Taking care of business is what we're going to do. I also know that he is pro single subject bills, which I've been advocating for quite some time. None of this omnibus crap. However, he did, in his proposal to become speaker, he did say that he would acquiesce to a potentially continuing resolution until after the holidays for our current budget, which it's a little kind of crazy. I mean, I would have rathered. I think he's got enough time where he could, we could at least get some of these spending packages, 12 separate spending packages through in order to fund the government. But he put it forth. And so we'll just have to see if he's going to stick to his guns. I know that he is definitely pro-life, which also pisses the libs off. And he's got a couple other things that being a constitutional lawyer, I'm hoping that he falls on the correct side of the Constitution, because we all know that, Obama claimed to be a constitutional lawyer, and we all know how that came out. So let's hope that this comes through properly. But I'm going to tell you, it is refreshing to actually see this situation at least resolved, so that we can get back to the business of government, or at least they can get back to the business of government. All right. So that came in obviously right after or right before I came on the air. So I wanted to make sure that we kind of put that out there. Because I had to, obviously that's a big deal. That is a huge deal for the Republicans, especially because they've basically been, in the words of Ben Shapiro, been kicking themselves in the balls and then running into a tree at the same time, which that would hurt. Anyway, but that's not what I necessarily wanted to talk about for tonight. I really want people to understand, and I'm sorry, this is going to get a little deep, I'm hoping, but it's been bugging me. It's been on my mind for the last couple of nights. I'll admit I haven't been sleeping as well as what I usually do. But it's sort of frustrating for me, and I think a lot of Westerners are sort of in this camp, to grasp what is going on over in the Middle East, and the how the situation over there is so, what would be considered so out of touch with the rest of Western society. And it made me think that there's some things that I think that the West, meaning the Western cultures, need to actually realize. And we need to come to grips with the fact that there are a group of people out there. This is the first of a few that I'm going to be talking about, but there are a group of people out there. There are groups of people out there, I should say, that do not want what we want. That do not, their values and ethics and everything else do not align with ours. And to sit here and expect, unfortunately, which we often do, is to sit here and expect that these people have and can be reasoned with and have talked about things like appeasement, have talked about compromise, have talked about living in harmony with other folks who may not share your values. That is a truly American trait. We have, and we've grown up with the idea of this melting pot that, we can show these people, whoever's out there, we can show them the wonders of American society and Western society and essentially have, what's happened here? And essentially have, okay, there we go. And essentially have, everybody come to the table. That all you have to do is convince people that that they are valued and valuable and so on and so forth, and bring them into the fold. And unfortunately, that isn't the case. And so this is one of those situations where Westerners have to understand that, again, there are people out there who do not think like us. Now, there's no better example, even though we've had examples here especially in the US, when you look at things like mobs of people who are heading off into, stores and looting stores, and you see mobs of people who were burning things down. And, we tend to think of that as mob mentality, and how that mob mentality kind of, takes over when you get into a situation like that. It's more of a baser instinct within ourselves, within the human nature and the human psyche, that causes us to link up and do things that we wouldn't normally do, because we're being stirred on, pushed by the mob, pushed by, peer pressure, things like that. There's been several studies on this, all of this, throughout our history. And the challenge here is that we need to understand that we, in the Western world generally, we tend to look at things like the taking of innocent human life as being a moral no-no. It's an aberration, and we abhor the idea, for the general sense, of the taking of human life. And it's not the same in other cultures. And it's definitely not the same when you get into a mindset of people who literally hate you just because of the fact that you exist. Now, this isn't bigotry coming from my side, okay? This isn't a bigoted statement necessarily, but it's more a fact of reality that, unfortunately, the Western culture, being as cut back from where we have been, and not, one of the things that I have to say kind of opened my eyes to other cultures is the fact that I've actually traveled to other countries. And I'm not saying that I've gone to other places that are outside of the Western realm, but even when you travel to other Western cultures, there are there is a little bit of what would be considered culture shock going into those different places. And it's not like here in America going up to Canada, okay, yeah, but we're both we're next to each other. You head off to someplace like Mexico, things are a little different. But, you know, generally speaking, we're still friendly with them, and they're still kind of friendly with other nations and things like that. You head into other places like down in South America, or even go off into Africa or head off into the Middle East, and it's a big, big change. And it's something that Americans in particular and the West really have struggles with understanding. Well, here's an example of what I'm talking about. Oops, wrong button. Here's the example of what I'm talking about. So this came out in the Washington Free Beacon, and it's a article that basically discussed the fact that ordinary Palestinians, meaning what would be considered as innocent civilians over in this horrific attack on Israel, they actually joined in Hamas's attack, rather than standing by and just, you know, maybe not engaging with Hamas, but just watching. They actually joined in on it. And there's video footage of this where you have ordinary civilians heading off. Even there was there was a video of a guy even on crutches that was heading in to the Israeli cities that were close to the Gaza Strip, where they had broken down the barrier wall, and they were going in and looting and doing God knows what else. But they also had apparently spontaneously joined in to other things. Not just like stealing or anything like that, but they were Gazans, just regular Gazans who were dressed as civilians and mostly unarmed, went in and were, you know, killing people with knives and that kind of stuff. And so, you know, we here in the West, we look at this, you know, when you see something on the street, like let's say for an example, you see a robbery on the street, you don't go and, you know, you don't go and necessarily, maybe you intervene, maybe you don't. It depends on the situation. But you don't join in after the person's down. You might go on over and pick them up and go, hey, you know, are you okay? Let me call the police. Maybe you're calling the police or 911 ahead of time. I don't know. But the point here is that you don't go and like join in. Most regular average civilians and citizens here in the West don't go and join in on that kind of stuff. And this article, which, you know, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but if you read it, it makes sense to where you take a look at this. And there's a lot of people who are trying to like beg and plead on the part of the Gazans and are saying, hey, you know, the Gazans are innocent people too. Well, maybe they aren't. Not as innocent as what we in the West would think. We think of civilians and we think of people in these kinds of engagements as oh, they're just innocent bystanders. They are subjected to and are, you know, just a product or a victim of their circumstance in where they are. It may not be though that way, at least not for all of the people that are over there. Because again, you have to keep in mind, they've been brought up under the idea and they've been taught from a very early age and a young age, kind of like, you know, in a way, not that I'm necessarily comparing them, although this is a relevant comparison. It's kind of like the young Nazis in Germany who were brought up under the auspices that everything in their problems, every one of their problems could have been blamed on the Jews, which led to the Holocaust. Okay. People often ask the question, how did the German people not stand up and say, you know, blah, blah, blah. I can't even believe that, you know, these people, they were easily manipulated. They were able to, you know, do atrocities to these people, and what would normally be issues were, to the normal civilian, the normal person, and they joined in on it. And so part of the reason for this, obviously, is because of the way they were brought up. Well, I got to take a break for just a quick second. So let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about, my wonderful store. If you like the program, you like what I'm doing, and you want to get yourself a really cool gift for Christmas coming up, head on over to my store and pick up a Whiskey Musings logo or a Whiskey Musings motto, shirt, t-shirt, sweatshirt, glass, apron. There's a bunch of different things. Head on over to store.whiskeymusings.online. That's store.whiskeymusings.online. And while you're there, when you pick up a product and you go to that checkout, put the promo code Christmas. That's all capital letters, Christmas, to get 15% off your entire order at store.whiskeymusings.online. That's store.whiskeymusings.online, promo code Christmas to get yourself 15% off. That is my gift to you for this Christmas, and that is running all the way up until Christmas Day. Once again, go to store.whiskeymusings.online and show off your affiliation with the Whiskey Musings broadcast. And hey, I'm going to tell you, it would be absolutely fabulous if you're in my area, or if I'm in your area, if I were to see you wearing some of that gear. We could stop and take a photo. Well, I'll take a photo with you even without the gear on, but it would be great to see you in the gear. Just as much as I appreciate you guys coming every day or every time I broadcast, I would absolutely love to see you in your gear. Send me photos when you get them. I picked up a photo from Coco Dominky. She sent me a photo of the sweatshirt that she picked up last week, and it was awesome. It was awesome to see. So send me a photo of you and your gear and that kind of stuff. It's really cool. Once again, promo code Christmas, all capital letters, at store.whiskeymusings.online for 15% off. Go check it out today. All right. So it's not just people in the other regions of the world that are potentially having an issue with this entire situation, because we actually have issues right here in America. If you haven't seen some of the video footage of the protests that are happening, in fact, there was a protest that happened just this past weekend at a university close to me, a major university close to me. And it's not just there. I mean, it's even in Western cultures. Okay. They are here, folks. They are here. And here's an example of a poll that was taken. This is in hot air, but there was a poll that was taken. And a majority of American Muslims, like those who have come here to enjoy the Western culture and freedom to, practice their religion however they want, there's still a majority of them believe that the attack on Israel was justified. Now, just for you guys to understand this, the attack on Israel, the original attack that killed, I think it's close to 1,500 now, if it's not at 1,500, Israelis and foreigners, by the way, including some Americans as well. They believed that the attack was justified. It was a Sunday, a holiday. It was civilians. If it was a military strike, I could get. But, again, this is a Western thinking taking into place. But here we are, people who have grown up here in America believe the attack on Israel was justified. And so we actually are living, in some cases, living with these people. And so this is the danger that we have with this entire thing. And we, as Westerners, we believe that even people who live here think as we think and want the same things that we want. And this is not the case. This is not anywhere near the case. And we need to take our minds out and understand that but not take our minds out, but put it in our minds to understand that the world as a whole is a dangerous place, and that our thought process may not necessarily translate even to our neighbors, okay, even to the people next to us. So we need to be cautious and alert and aware of what's going on. Now, as far as the number of Americans that were killed, apparently 33 now is the count, according to Blinken, Secretary Blinken, who were killed in Hamas's attack on Israel. And we still have roughly another 10 Americans that we know of that are unaccounted for, possibly could be part of the 200 hostages that Hamas has taken. 196 that Hamas has taken so far, because they've released 4 of them here recently in an attempt to essentially stave off any kind of an invasion. I think that might be the overall goal for them. So anyway, what drives this? What drives this particular scenario in terms of our culture? Well, Dan Bongino actually highlighted this, so I got to give a hat tip to him, hat tip to Dan for putting this out there. But this is from the Free Press, and I'm going to recommend that you read this. I really think you should, because it gives you an insight into the situation that we're in, and it also references a book by the great Thomas Sowell. I'm kind of a fan. I won't say a big fan, but I'm a fan of Thomas Sowell, and it pointed me to a book that Thomas Sowell has. And Thomas Sowell wrote a book called A Conflict of Visions, and in it he talks about the differences between what you could actually apply to the Democrats as well as the Republican or the progressives versus the conservatives. And so here, if you have the opportunity, and this Sowell book was actually published in 1987, but he offers a simple and powerful, this is coming from the piece, he offers a simple and powerful explanation of why people disagree about politics. And it's because of the fact that we disagree about human nature. We see the world through what he considers one of 2 competing visions. The first one is what he calls the unconstrained vision. And that vision, which is the progressive mindset, is that humans are malleable and can be perfected. They believe that social ills and evils can be overcome through collective action that encourages humans to behave better. To subscribers of this view, poverty, crime, inequality, and war are not inevitable. Rather, they are puzzles that can be solved. We need only to say the right things, enact the right policies, spend enough money, and we will suffer these social ills no more. Okay, that pretty much kind of ties up in the progressive mindset. So on the contrast side is you have people who see the world through a constrained vision lens, who believe that human nature is a universal constant. In other words, that humans are going to act as humans do, regardless. And no amount of social engineering can actually change the sober reality of human self-interest, or the fact that human empathy and social resources are necessarily scarce. People who see things this way believe that the most political and social problems will never be solved, but that they will only be managed. And this approach is bedrock to the conservative worldview. I tend to agree with that statement as far as, if I call myself a conservative, I tend to agree with it. But I actually take it a little bit farther than that in terms of the fact that I add to it that we have innately within us a self-interest with ourself, and that our empathy and everything is and our social resources are based off of the fact that we have a higher moralistic value that we add to it that comes from our religious beliefs and our religious backgrounds. And especially here in America, because of the fact that we were built off of Judeo-Christian values and principles, that's where we get our upper level thought processes. And that's where we elevate ourselves out and are able to not necessarily condition it completely out of us, but we are able to temper some of our more base desires, because we've been in, this is going to sound bad, but we've been enlightened by the fact that our belief in God and as supreme being gives us the capacity to understand that there are things bigger than ourselves, which is where the progressive mindset generally tends to sit with. Now, in the piece, there was a couple other paragraphs and things like that. I'm not going to read them here, but the author does go into Hamas's barbarism, and this is from the piece, and the explanations and celebrations throughout the West that followed their orgy of violence have forced an overnight exodus from the unconstrained camp into the constrained one. So basically what he's talking about here is that he is seeing, he or she, let me see, who is this person? Konstantin Kisin. Anyway, the author is seeing a change in some people, and he talks about, or the author talks about it a little bit further on in the piece, with regards to the atrocities that happened over in Israel on October 7th. But folks, what we really need to focus on and what we really need to understand is, first of all, whether or not there's actually two worldviews. Okay. It's realistically, it's an understanding of like a higher order of civil society that we do have, and we've been able to overcome some of our more base, we'll call them animalistic instincts, that we've been able to step out of that and learn from that and develop ourselves throughout time to make us into a more civilized society. And so to sit here and, say that this doesn't exist in the modern world anymore is a bit of a fallacy on the West's part. We need to understand that other cultures do not value things like we do. Other cultures do not see things as we do. And the biggest challenge that we have, of course, in living with these other cultures is to make it a clear understanding that they can't condemn us or attack us or anything else. We need to at least show them, those other cultures, especially the really violent ones, that we are willing to take the step to go and do what they would normally do, which is the violence and the abhorred things that happen either in war or in our baser, as far as humanistic baser tendencies, tribalism kind of scenarios, if you do this, that we need to be able to show that we are capable of doing that still. That we are not necessarily under the fallacy and belief that this is, we are so removed from it that we don't need to do that. But we need to show them, that we are willing to go down to their level, but that we don't. And that, my friends, is called the power of deterrence. And that's something that certain people realize and understand, that you have to be able to show that you are capable of that kind of violence, but that you are not going to do it as long as things remain normal. And this is part of what has driven the whole concept that people are talking about in terms of the difference between like Trump and Biden, as an example, is that it's this kind of scenario where America needs to show strength and restraint at the same time. We're not showing the strength, and our restraint can't be perceived as weakness. It needs to be strength and a restraint, not a weakness, but a restraint in terms of things of this kind of scenario. And so that's kind of where we're at with this. Now, we also have to understand that because of our nature of opening up our doors and forgiving and being the what would be considered more, or at least thought of as the more forgiving of the two situations or the two sides that you see, whether it's the progressives versus the conservatives, we need to be aware of the fact that we have a potential that some of these people who don't think like us, who want to destroy us, who want to take and wipe this world of our existence, the West's existence is what I mean, may potentially already be here. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've had a wide open border for years. So this came out in the Post-Millennial, and it was a DHS report, a Department of Homeland Security report that got leaked, that Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists, which are, again, clearly actors or third-party actors of the state of Iran, they could already be here in the U.S. And this is because of the fact that we've had, millions come across the border, and it's wide open. I was reading an article, and I didn't put it in the show notes, but I was reading an article about a guy who went and was talking to Armenian, I believe, cab drivers. And some of them have been here for years and went through the legal process, and some did not. They are here generally illegally. And they were talking about how easy it was to cross the border. In fact, one of them even mentioned to the poster, or to the writer of the article, that they had gone back and gotten their family members and brought them across because it was easier to bring them across the southern border than it was to try and get them to come here, obviously, because if they were here illegally, why not? But because it was so easy to bring them across the border. And so you sit here and you look at this and you're thinking to yourself, okay, wait a minute. I thought the border was closed, or at least that's what the government is telling us, but the border's not closed. It's not anywhere near it. And so this truly, what I'm showing here on the screen, this truly could be true and clear. This is the, this is scary to even think about. I mean, it's bad enough to think about the criminal element, like the MS-13 and the gangs and some of those folks that are coming across. But now we have what would be considered a organized terror group that has literally destruction on their mind. And they feel like if they die as a part of those operations, that they will live in martyrdom, and they get paid over in their home countries, the Palestinian Authority in particular, like Hamas and so on and so forth, they actually pay the family members of these people who die as a part of this, and they're paying them millions of dollars, by the way, funneled off of us and our, humanitarian aid that we send them. But they pay them these millions of dollars in stipends and everything else. This is some scary stuff. This is literally some scary stuff, and stuff that we need to take to heart and push our government and our elected officials to start taking a look at and watch and really try to backfill from all of this. Now, we talk about the third-party actors like Hezbollah and Hamas and the Palestinian Authority and some of these other, terrorist organizations. But as we all know, they are only third-party actors for the one true state that is over there in the Middle East that is pushing for this. While, Egypt and Syria and Jordan, while they sympathize and agree with some of what the gains that are going, you essentially, what you end up with is the idea that these folks, they're more like the UAE, like Qatar, they're more of, well, we agree with what these groups are attempting to do, but we're not necessarily going to necessarily fall in with that group. However, we agree with what they're trying to do. Okay, well, that unfortunately is kind of the same thought process that we need to combat, or we need to be aware of from that particular situation. But everything is coming, let's be honest, everything or most everything is coming from Iran. And this is even scarier than our southern border, although our southern border being open and nobody knowing where these people are is enough to cause us some problems. But Senator Ted Cruz came out, this is according to Fox News, Senator Ted Cruz issues a chilling warning on some Biden-appointed Iranian spies that were working inside the U.S. government. This is one of the greatest national security scandals in our nation's history, according to Teddy Boy. He kind of talks about a guy by the name of Rob Malley. And Rob Malley was Joe Biden's chief negotiator for Iran. And he is actually a sympathizer for Iran. So again, even in the Western world, we still have people like the progressives, like the leftist folks who are advocating for these people. Why they are, it doesn't make any sense to me because, again, I'm a conservative. I can't really understand what goes on in a leftist mind. But the thing about it is that this is a potential problem and should have been vetted and figured out by the government had it been working with somebody or dealing with an administration that isn't so anti-American. But this is a bit of a problem. And it's scary. It's kind of scary to even think about something like this happening. Again, the Biden administration, its corruption and everything that it's got going on is worse. I've told you this before on this program. It's worse than Watergate ever was. So this is a really, really big problem. And what's worse is everybody kind of thinks, for a lot of times, everybody thinks that, hey, all we have to do is just kind of stay out of it. We don't have to get involved, so on and so forth. And here's kind of the situation. America just needs to stay out of it and everything else. Well, guess what? As I said on this last program, or the last couple of programs, Iran is pushing us, and they're doing it through their third-party actors, and they're pushing us. This came out in the National Pulse. I told you last program that 7 times U.S. bases were attacked. Well, here now, 13 times just in the past week, it's been added to in the past week. The U.S. Department of Defense has admitted that U.S. troops stationed in the Middle East have shockingly faced 13 attacks within the past week alone. Forces in Iraq, particularly, experienced 10 assaults, while those stationed in Syria were subject to 3. And, of course, this is under Commander-in-Chief Joe Biden. I don't recall hearing any of that in the 4 years that Trump was involved, although not necessarily attributing it to Trump 100%. But I can tell you that when you have someone who is of a strength, a candidate who projects strength, even in Trump's case, projects a little instability, it causes other people to take a second look at things. And now that we have Biden involved, we're no longer as strong as what the world, what we used to be in the world view. And it's not just in the world view that this is occurring either. But the thing about it is that as long as we sit here and show and don't do any response to any of this stuff, I mean, I'm sorry, it's just going to get worse. It's sort of like the bully. Realistically, I mean, let's just break it down even a little bit deeper than this, but it's sort of like the bully that comes and steals your lunch money. If you let it happen, he's only going to do it again. And if you actually stand up to them and show them that there is a cost for them doing these horrific things, for them doing these things to you, then it is something that causes them not necessarily respect from them, but at least gives them pause to understand that there's actually a larger skin in the game. And that is literally what the power of deterrence truly means. And this is something that we here in America forget with that kind of scenario, because we believe that we can manipulate, or we can negotiate and come to a peaceful conclusion, when in actuality what we should be doing is showing, again, strength and restraint. Strength and restraint on that strength. We need to show that we're the biggest bouncer in the room, and that we're not getting involved because we know we can hurt you. We know we can destroy you. We know we can kill you, but we don't want to. And we're not about to, because of the fact that we don't want to. And as long as you behave, we're okay with that. We're okay with your existence, because we don't believe in just random killing and genocide. But at the same time, again, we need to show the world one more time that we are not going to take atrocities being served upon American people. Reagan did it with Gaddafi back in the 80s. Gaddafi started getting full of himself. He started talking, a lot of smack and everything else. Reagan went in, took out 3 of his palaces and said, "We knew you weren't there." I mean, yes, he killed one of his sons in the process, but he pretty much told Gaddafi, "We knew you weren't home. We knew where you were. We can get you anytime. Shut up." And that's kind of what we have to do, especially because we've turned into this when we've turned into this sort of weak appeasement kind of thing, rather than, again, the strongest and mightiest and most powerful in the room, but yet the most restrained in the room at the same time, is kind of what we're dealing with in terms of this sort of scenario. And we need to understand that moving forward. All right. Let me go ahead and take one more break, folks. One situation that we have is a lack of understanding of our founding documents, and especially our founding principles. And you can help that out, honestly, by going and providing the United States Constitution in this wonderful, wonderful package of Saddleback leather and water-resistant pages. Very easy to clean up, by the way. If you spill on them, you can just wipe them off, and it's good. These are they're also tear-resistant. And check out that binding. That binding is a string that goes all the way through the 1/8 inch leather cover. It is fantastic. It's got nice, what I'm being told as sexy rounded corners. It's buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tested, Billy approved, and my youngest Whiskey Warrior has a copy of it and earned his Civics badge in Scouts with this thing's help. This is a great keepsake item. It is fantastic for gifts, and you can get them by going to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. Now, these are put out by the Institute on the Constitution and the company called Saddleback. Saddleback Leather Company. You can get them by going to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. You know, go and get yourself a couple of them and stick them into your liberal family members' stockings, just to piss them off. Or get one for yourself. I mean, buy 2 or 3. It's really it's a fantastic gift, and it is. They've got a 100-year warranty on materials and defects in workmanship. If something goes wrong with this thing in that 100 years, you can send it back to them, and they will either fix it or replace it for free. So go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online and pick one up today. Let's train our next generations on the reality of the fantastic American that we have, the American values that we have that are enshrined in the Constitution. The only thing I could say is I wish it had the Declaration of Independence in it, but that's okay. It's another document. That's not a big deal. But anyway, so go and get your Constitution, leather-bound U.S. Constitution at constitution.whiskeymusings.online and support the program. I do appreciate it. Go there today. And of course, while you're there, check out the rest of the Institute on the Constitution's offerings. They've got just a bunch of books and other things that are out there. Go and check them out today. All right, back to the show. So speaking of Biden and his weakness and his challenges, even in the world that we have had going on, this came out. It is a poll, Gallup poll, and apparently Americans are not only losing Biden or losing trust in Biden, but they're also losing trust in our news media. Shock of shocks for that. But Americans' trust in news media falls to new lows. Now, apparently they've been doing these polls for a while. But let me just check. Let me just show you the poll right here. So this is the graph that's in the article. And you can see that from 1972 all the way to 2022, there's been a drop for the most part. I mean, from, 1990 from 1998 into the 2000s, it's kind of gone up and down. It's become a little, all over the place. But right now we're looking at the percentages of people who they just don't trust the media anymore. And so the numbers here are 38%, 38% don't trust it very much. 34% don't trust it a great deal, or what is considered a fair amount. And the last one is 28%. I'm sorry, I misquoted that. 38% said they don't trust it at all. 34% said that they don't trust it a great deal, and 28% said not very much. So our trust in America's media is really, really getting low. And so, this is a bit of a problem for the American media, which is part of the reason why all of their ratings have been dropping. But another one that came out, and I also found this on Gallup's poll, but we also apparently as Americans are losing trust in our government. And it's all three branches, by the way, that are taking a hit. So it's not just that we trust one branch over another. We're actually not trusting any of them. And can you really blame it, considering some of the decisions that have been coming out of the federal government? But what does this do? This sets up, let me read you the numbers here real quick. So those that don't trust the judicial branch is 47%. Those that don't trust the legislative branch is 38%. So that's Congress. And those that don't trust the executive branch are 43%. And of course, that's Joe Biden and so on and so forth. But the thing about this, though, is that again, we as the American populace are losing faith in institutions that we, for a very long time, trusted and valued, like the news media, like the branches of government. I mean, how many times as a kid were you told, hey, trust the police? Now we're no longer seeing it. So this is a degradation, essentially, of our society. And believe it or not, a lesson that the West needs to learn is that you cannot trust government. You need to start learning about you start learning to be self-sufficient and self-independent. And that's kind of the scenario that we're dealing with here in terms of today's society. So we have to understand that our institutions are breaking down. And this is part of the reason why you're seeing such a dichotomy and having a lot of societal angst over this, because when you lose trust in institutions that you've, believed and had faith in for your entire life, tends to have some issues and consequences, and we're living it right now. We want to talk about trust in the news media. I mean, other than the fact that we've had like a clear violation of trust in the news media, this kind of stuff definitely doesn't help. Well, this is the New York Times, so let's give it its due. But the New York Times, if you recall, there was a Palestinian launched rocket that came down next to a hospital in Gaza. That it was an errant rocket, and it came down on the hospital or the hospital parking lot. And we still, I mean, honestly, I still don't know how many people are killed, but it wasn't as big as what was initially reported in terms of like 500 people being killed. But the New York Times issued the left would consider this an apology. The right, no, not so much. And they pretty much said that they are saying that they followed the terrorists or Hamas and their claims. And rather than writing the article, this is what they say, writing the article to basically say these are unconfirmed reports, they just sort of ran with it. Now, the reasons for them doing this are, varied and widespread, but the fact of the matter is that once again, we're looking at a degradation in the media. As, Denzel Washington once talked about, the media, if you read the newspaper, if you read the news and you stay up on the news, you're either misinformed. If you don't read it at all, then you're uninformed. And so what do? Well, the problem is that the media has actually been entrusted, and this is one of the things that comes in the First Amendment of the Constitution. The press has got to get it right. But now we've moved into a scenario where the press no longer cares about getting it right. What they care about is being the first one to talk about it. They don't care if it's right or wrong. And in fact, half the time, they don't even issue retractions or apologies anymore. Something like this in the past would have been put on the front page. They would have been put on the front page and it would have been like, look, we apologize, our bad, blah, 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 whatever you want to say about it. Now it's barely even a note, not even a one pager at that. And they don't even really apologize. They just basically say, well, we should have been a little clearer in our writing about the thing, rather than, hey, we apologize for the way that it came out, blah, whatever you want to say. But here they're just saying, yeah, we could have been a little more clear about it. So they're basically shifting blame. They don't want to take the blame, which is another problem that our society, Western society, needs to wake up to. Our cultural shift from accountability and responsibility has been a serious degradation in our society today. Because we need to be, you need to have that accountability and responsibility in order for civil society to essentially continue and survive. We don't have that today. And unfortunately, that lesson is coming, I think, coming really soon. All right. So a couple of last things before I get to a very special Pet of the Week segment at the very end here. But a couple other things. Last episode, I showed you what the House Oversight Committee has found. They had a image of a check that went directly from Jim Biden, which is Joe Biden's brother, into that was written to Joe Biden for the exact amount that they received, that Jim Biden received from a Chinese company. And now we're seeing even more information. Again, the longer this goes on, the more information, the more they dig, the better, or the more information that we get about this Biden crime family. But this came out in the Daily Caller. Biden associate at the center of China money transfers played golf with Joe up to a dozen times, according to FBI docs. So remember that claim by Joe Biden? I don't talk to any of my son's business associates. I don't talk to them. I don't know what they're doing. I don't have conversations. And yet he not only lied about that, but now he played golf with them. Now, I don't know if anybody realizes how long an 18-hole golf game actually is, but if you're an average golfer and you are taking your time on the course, you could be looking at 3 to 4 hours. Now, what are these people talking about for 3 to 4 hours? I guarantee you the weather that Joe claims that's all that he's ever done would have been done in the first hole. And so there would have been 17 other holes that he would have had to come up with conversations about. And that's just one round. We're not even talking, I mean, a dozen times, that's 12. That's 48 hours, assuming that it took 4 hours to go through the golf course, assuming that Joe Biden can actually walk that entire way without having issue. Well, he's probably in the golf cart anyway, as most people do. But the thing here is that it's roughly 4 hours to do a round of golf. And he met with them a dozen times. So that's 48 hours. That's over a week, a work week worth of time in front of these people. And yeah, this is just, I mean, again, it just keeps getting a little bit worse and a little bit worse. If you haven't figured out by now that Joe Biden is literally a corrupt politician, then I don't know what to tell you. You are either completely stupid or living under a rock, to be honest about it. Well, it's stuff like this that has actually made Joe Biden, and of course, Joe Biden's handling of God knows all of the different facets of our current situation. Breitbart puts out this poll. There was a poll that came out that Biden is underwater on the top 3 voter issues. Now listen to this. You have the top 3 voter issues. You have immigration, inflation, and jobs. Okay. Not in that necessarily in that order. In fact, inflation is like the number 1. All right. But he's underwater on all 3 of those issues. How is this guy surviving in order to be able to even think that he has an opportunity to be the elected official in 2024 is beyond me. Now, this was a Harvard-Harris poll that reveals this. Out of the 29 issues polled, 32% of voters said inflation was the top issue. So we're not quite at a full third yet. We're almost there, just a hairbreadth away. It was followed by immigration at 27% and the economy and jobs at 24%. The top 3 issues preceded guns, crime and drugs, terrorism, national debt, healthcare. And out of that list, guns, healthcare, those are like really pretty big things that Joe Biden talks about. He talks about the national debt where he's like taking things down, or taking down the debt, which he's not. And so he's not even paying attention to the top 3 issues per se from this. Well, it's even worse than that. Now, that was a nationwide poll, but it's even worse than that. We're looking at him being underwater in even a deep blue state like New York. His poll numbers are underwater in New York. Now, for those of you that don't know, that region of the country is actually his home area. The New England area is his home area, being from Delaware. But his favorability rating is dipping. And this is a separate poll by Siena College Research Institute. But apparently his unfavorability rating in New York fell to 45-52, which is a drop from 50-45 just a month ago in September. According to the Tuesday poll, a majority of Democrats, 52, want a different presidential candidate in 2024 compared to 54% who said they wanted Biden to be the nominee in September. So we're just talking like just over a month, not even a full month yet from the last poll, and he's already dropped 2 percentage points. That's not good for these guys. They want the Democrats are saying that they want a different presidential nominee. Speaking of presidential nominees, by the way, I don't know if anybody caught this, but Gavin Newsom, who is picked by some to potentially be the nominee for 2024 for the Democrats because of the fact that, Joe Biden is really doing an absolute horrible job. And, I'll be honest with you. I don't understand why the Republicans, and especially Donald Trump, don't just do what I've been saying on this program multiple times. Just give up the freaking, the whole thing about going after your opponents. And you've, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, he's already won the nomination. I mean, he's already, in fact, I saw an article that didn't include it, but I saw an article where he's actually increased his lead in the last week. But you have a plethora of things you can go after Joe Biden for, in terms of his absolute abysmal governance of the country in just about in every aspect, both foreign, domestic, economic, so on and so forth. And he is, why this guy is still the only reason why he's remotely thinking about running again is because he thinks he's doing an absolute wonderful job, because the guy is just, he's oatmeal brains. He's turnip brains. Just absolutely horrible. But if Trump would just stop going after, DeSantis and actually start thinking, I know he's got, these trials and stuff going on, which are a distraction to him, but he needs to start focusing directly on Joe Biden. And even some are talking about RFK, now that he's running as an independent, being a problem for Trump. I don't see him as a problem for Trump. In fact, he made a comment. I think he said something to somebody. I don't even remember what it was, but it was completely against what a conservative would normally do for that. And so, yeah, just this is just, our state of politics today is just absolutely horrible. I can't even believe that we're living through this. I really can't. Anyway. All right. I got to end it on a good note. I got to end the show on a fantastic note, actually. So, of course, I was perusing X, and I'll admit, reveling a little bit in the liberal meltdown over the fact that Mike Johnson, who is a conservative, got the speakership appointment. Which honestly, 220, that's not bad considering the fact we only have 221 Republicans in the House, 213 Democrats, which of course they all locked up, which I don't know if anybody noticed, but Hakeem Jeffries keeps talking about bipartisanship. I mentioned this on the last program. Every time I see bipartisanship and I see, we need to come to a bipartisan solution, I always laugh. And then I put in a GIF, an animated GIF of the Princess Bride, where Manny Patinkin, I can't remember his character name, but he's looking at the short bald guy, the other character. He's looking at the short bald guy, and he's like, "I do not think that word means what you think it means," or something like that, some paraphrase of that. And so I just keep putting that in because it's just irritating me to listen to or to even read these people's posts where they talk about bipartisanship. They are nothing bipartisan about them. But anyway, as I was running, I digress, but as I was running through, and I'm being told by Mark over on Facebook that it's Gideon. So anyway, as I was scrolling through all of the liberal tiers that were running on about that, the one thing that showed up, I grabbed it because I wanted to demonstrate it's not a whiskey warrior pet, but this is definitely something, and I think we need to, provided it's true. So keep in mind, I haven't confirmed this yet, although I'm hearing from a bunch of people that it is true. It's not 100% confirmed at this point, but we need to start treating our four-legged soldiers the same way. And so let me bring this up. This is apparently a working soldier dog, service dog in the restaurant. Now, this restaurant is apparently Texas Roadhouse, and according to the poster, Dalbo dog, DALBO, dog on X, formerly known as Twitter. Apparently, this soldier dog was brought into the Texas Roadhouse and was allowed on Veterans Day and was allowed to sit and eat a steak. They gave him a steak. This dog reportedly did 2 full tours, and apparently some people were not happy about this. They were not happy about this particular dog being in this restaurant. Now, normally I agree. It's a little weird to see animals in restaurants, unless of course the restaurant is like dog friendly or whatever, and it's well known. But this particular dog enjoyed a steak at the Texas Roadhouse. And shortly after I caught this, by the way, it was retweeted by James Woods, who of course I follow and is a great patriot and American. If you don't follow him on X, you really should. He puts out posts occasionally with regards to our American Revolution, because he is a member of the Sons of the American Revolution. Anyway, so here's this dog. I grabbed it and I said, you know what? I got to do this for my Pet of the Week segment. And even though I didn't light off the Pet of the Week stinger, but I still wanted to end the program by showing this guy. And so apparently Pet Matchmaker Rescue South supports the Texas Roadhouse, veterans, and all military working dogs. And the credit, of course, for the photo goes to the original owner and author of the photo itself. You know what? I've been to Texas Roadhouse, and I got to tell you, I kind of like their food. I mean, I especially like their honey butter. Oh, that stuff on biscuits is just fantastic. But as you know, I am a big supporter of veterans, and I am especially a big supporter of service animals. They do so much for us, and they do so much for our servicemen and women in terms of detecting IEDs and things like that and protecting them. And so yeah, it's just great, kind of a great thing. So I wanted to bring that to you as a final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. So do me a favor, if you like the program, you enjoy what I do, head on over to Rumble, because I don't know how long I'll be able to stream on YouTube and Facebook and even Twitter. But head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account. It is free. And then find the Whiskey Musings Broadcast channel. I believe still I'm the only one on Rumble. And you can find me there, or find the channel there, and follow. Hit the green follow button and follow me over there, because if I ever get banned off of YouTube and or Facebook and or Twitter, I will always be on Rumble, the free speech alternative to YouTube. And you guys have a great rest of your week. We'll see you Saturday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.
The Whiskey Musings broadcast is produced by Active Eye Media, LLC. All rights reserved.